27 on it. That's all right. Oh, he's just gonna roll in there.
Yes.
This guy crazy. Oh, we didn't lift it. So we should have lifted that ahead of time. You got it, yeah. You got to remember. Always lift exposed CC and pull back to safety.
My man!
So because he can make Broodlords now, we're in huge doo-doo.
Yeah.
You know what's really good for us? He's got 18 Hydras, and that's way too many. You can also see he's forgotten a Hydra upgrade. Maximum of about 14 or 15 Hydras is the absolute max. Because notice he has no attack upgrades for them, so they're just a support unit. And attacking with Hydraling is one of the silliest things you could possibly do. So this is what you're talking about with him kind of just being a bit silly. Okay. That was insane.
It gets even more silly.
The number of Zergs, dude. Don't underestimate the power of the Zerg headbutt, you know. You can be dead in the water, and that's usually the moment where a Terran has no options, where the Zerg player stops spreading creep and taking bases and starts headbutting into the Terran's defenses. There's like a condition Zergs have on the ladder. I don't know, it's some subconscious way of like wanting to avoid getting nerfed or something, where Zergs are really good at, myself included, at like, where it's like literally the only way the Terran could win is the Zerg just headbutting into them. And that's when the Zerg starts headbutting into them and just doesn't improve any of their longer parts of the game. So you're doing some good kind of harassment here and stuff. You tried to get up a 4th command center, which you desperately need to land. I guess your plan here is to just play bio tank and just look for the right engagements.
Yes, I did not want to transition into anything.
Yep.
I mean, the only thing I was expecting to be building soon is Vikings against the Broodlords.
Right, just a few Vikings.
Ghosts versus Corruptors. But
alright, so Broodlords are making. But yeah. Yeah, Zerg players just lost momentum in this game really hard. It's just running almost pure Zergling around. And had a very Zergling heavy army earlier in the game as well. So, funny thing about Zergling heavy armies is they're really good at ambushing the opponent, especially in the mid game, because they're more mobile, they can surround you, they can just get on top of you, right? And limit your movement, and then even a small number of banelings can get massive catastrophic hits. The problem is, if they're you know, engaging Pure Ling into a big enough ball of Marines with Medivacs, it's really bad. Like, he was ahead 2 upgrades in that fight. Normally the Terran's the one who's ahead in upgrades. But he just fought a gigantic ball of Marines with Medivacs with Pure Ling, which is just silly. It's like such a silly thing. You just never do that as a Zerg player. Those Zerglings are good for counterattacks, good for backstabs, but otherwise you're only meant to use them like that if you got Banelings, Infestors, Broodlords, Ultras, other stuff. He's also going triple upgrades and he's not droning his bases up. So yes, we are getting lucky here. But I think we just lost so much momentum with that first push. We also didn't quite have the tank count we would have wanted. So at this point, it's kind of like, okay, cool. You're gonna hang in there and you might get this game with some good engagements, which is nice. That's good. It looks like you're doing the right things. You're kind of letting him run his army out in front of the Broodlords. You're engaging them where you can, that sort of stuff. Let's go right back. Let's go right back here. And we're gonna look at your tank production. So this is your 2nd siege tank building here. Yeah, we only have like 4 tanks, like 10 minutes, I think. So let's check that factory production. Real simple thing. This is the sort of stuff you should be looking at. You should be like, oh, you know what? I think that push would have worked if I had 7 siege tanks rather than 4. And we can actually start to identify, oh, like maybe I just need more consistent production on the factory or something like that, right? Because you have a really good medevac count, but I always prioritize tanks a bit more than medevacs. Like right now, we've got an extra medevac just chilling at our natural. It's not really important, yeah? And there we go. We've finally started up another siege tank. So let's keep an eye on this siege tank production. So it might just be that 1 siege tank we missed, but I think it's, yeah, it looks like it's going to be about 2 siege tanks, maybe 2.5 that we miss in production. So you can see another one starts up here. All right, cool. So yeah, so you can see we're actually like not on that. So sometimes I go the other way where I'm so obsessed with my tank count being ready for my push that I'll like have 3 or 4 tanks queued up And then I'm like, oh, that's too many, and I'll actually go and cancel, you know, the last 2 from the queue because it's wasting money. But definitely something we've realized. That's really big. Having a few more tanks can make a huge difference.
Ready for dust.
Tank production is inconsistent. So what do you think is a good idea to try to remember to build tanks a bit more? Do you think it's just every production cycle you're going to try to remember to tap the each tank hotkey, whereas at the moment you aren't? Or like I mean, let's go find one of your production cycles and look at it while we think about this.
TV ready. Ready for dust. SCV ready.
So there's a cycle. Did we? So we just caught a cycle then. So what do you think happens there? Tell me.
You want a piece of me, boy?
In the cycle, normally I build
Yep.
SCVs, then I build army. No, I build SCVs, I drop mules, I build army, then I build depots. But at the end I'm not sure what I should do first. Build depots or follow keep building buildings from a build order.
SCV ready.
Like because you're short on money, you mean? Like, oh, you're like not sure which one to prioritize first.
I'm not sure which one to prioritize in case I'm short on money. Yes.
Okay. So if we take a look at, we just heard you
Command
say
center.
what you know, what we do in an ideal situation, but that's not necessarily what we did here. So let's just look at that one more time. Because we're microing, right? It's natural to do a bit more of like just queue up some units, right? But you are going to take a
Yeah.
deep breath in it afterwards. So what happens here is you're like, okay, you guys go unload there, and then you're going to jump home in a sec. You jump home, production, and you queue up a few Marines, right?
Yeah.
What do we do then? We then start the orbital because it's there, and then we go, okay, I should do a proper cycle. We go to the command center, we select the engineering bays, we then select the barracks, we then build a depot, and then we look back at our army. Did we actually queue up more SCVs there is what I'm wondering. I don't know if we did. Because that seemed a little bit disorganized. Let's look at that one more time. And you know, you can see exactly what you had clicked on live, right? Okay, so we queue up more command center, more SCVs there.
I think the problem is that when I see something that I can do, like for example building that orbiter, I do it, right? And should I not do that and just ignore it and do my build order until I get to it?
I think so. I think everyone has their own system. So I think it's more important to develop a system that we stick with, right? So for you, it makes sense to say, well, you know what? I will do things as I see them, and then I will
Command center has
resume
been
my
upgraded.
normal macro cycle. That's fine.
SCV ready.
The problem here isn't the order we're doing it in. It's the fact that we're not finishing the other part of it, right? Because we ended up queuing up, I think we queued up an SCV, but it was only one, when I think we definitely could be queuing up 2 SCVs per command center at that point. But we didn't queue tank, right? Was the kind of thing that ended up being a little odd. So at this point, it's not bad that we've made the orbital opportunistically, but it feels like the whole thing, it's very easy to forget parts of our build. And maybe this, you know, works for you as long as there's an underlying system. So this is just as much me problem solving it as you, right? Us coming up with a system together that makes the most sense for you. So if we look at it, we're kind of bouncing around now. Sorry, let's go back a few more seconds. I'm going to select these the command centers. So yeah, you do very quickly queue up 2 SCVs. They didn't have anything queued. You're going to queue up the 2 SCVs. You're going to queue up a few Marines, SCVs, Marines, and a medevac. So you just might not have had the money for a tank there. So if we look at that, I think we didn't have the money for a tank just barely, because we went bam bam bam. Like those units pop up so quickly. No, we did, unless we selected medevac before going for a siege tank. What do you normally build first, medevacs or tanks?
I build tanks.
Tanks first,
Tanks.
right? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so we didn't build a tank there. I'm not sure if that's you saying, oh, I've already got one in production, I don't need one. But it would have been perfect to queue up a tank just then. And tanks take priority over medevacs. So I think on a basic level, we can just literally say, hey, wait a second, tank production should take priority over medevacs, right? Because later on, you end up with like 10 medevacs. It's more important for your push to have a higher siege tank count, right? Like the medevacs end up really nice for you being able to stim around and run that big bio ball around and doom drop and stuff. But that's kind of like a desperate maneuver, right? Where at any point you could just get caught by hydras or fungal or corruptors and things could go very bad. Whereas having the good tank count really strengthens that push. So tank production should take priority over medevacs. So that's a good rule. Do you think you normally would start a siege tank in this scenario?
No, normally I wouldn't, because I see one already building like the white dot, and then I think, okay, I don't need to build a siege tank.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how far it is in production.
Oh, you can't see that? Can't you see
No.
the bar above the factory that shows it being like 90% complete? Well, that doesn't show up in game, does it? Does it? Yes, it does.
It does. I don't look at it because I look at the.
Oh, you're looking at your bottom
thing on the
display
bottom.
bar in the wireframe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, I never look at that. I never found that to be too useful. A lot of people like to check their production by looking at that. I guess I do glance at it occasionally. Occasionally, I do glance at it, but I try not to weigh too much in. We see there though, because the factory is almost finished, right? We should never be reading anything off just one dot being in there then, right? Because you could literally have a siege tank about to finish, like in this scenario, and then we skip it over, and then we're not going to remember it till the next cycle. So I think that should probably be a rule where you ignore single dot.
Should I then check regularly if how far my progress bar is, I guess, or how far the building or the unit is to finishing?
I think just queue it up. Queue one up every cycle should be fine. Because like if you think about like the whole idea of the macro cycle, right, is like to do it every 30 seconds, right? And a siege tank takes 32 seconds. So if we can try to get it to be 2 SCVs per command center, 4 Marines per reactor, 1 tank per factory, 2 medevacs per starport, lowest priority, then that can be something that we just hit mindlessly every 30 seconds. Because otherwise it's too much conscious thought and activity. The moment that you have to micro Marines, or there's a Ling run by going on, or someone's trying to Nidus worm you, but you're also trying to micro a Liberator in his base at the same time, we're not going to be able to do it, right? So as good as it is to look at the bar or to look at certain things to get an idea, that's all bonus, right? That should be on top of the fundamental. So we want to make sure the fundamental's a little bit more solid first. So I think especially like when we're at the very start of only 2 barracks, a factory, and a starport, you're going to be more manual. You're going to be more only queuing up things when you need it, especially if the game's very calm and there's not too much going on. But especially once we get like a minute from now, like when we get to like 7:30, so, you know, you're up on 5 barracks, you're adding crazy amounts of production, your economy is getting out of control. Like there's no way we can be queuing units up as much, right? So remember how I was saying, hey, let's get used to queuing more Marines. I think at that point, maybe we should sink a little bit more into that 30-second cycle where we just queue a little bit more on everything. And that way it syncs up with the non-stop tank production. What do you think?
That sounds like a really good idea. My only problem with that is since I started playing, I was always thinking about the dead supply when I queue up units. So I always made sure I did not queue up units. So it I guess it goes against my principle, I guess.
I think
I
it's
know
one of
it's
the worst
stupid, and
principles that so many Terran players have stuck deep in our consciousness, right? Because there's so many videos and there's so many people who tell you don't have dead supply, don't queue extra things up, and it's just one of those things where it's like we've got so many more important things to do and we need to shift that focus away from it. Like I think, you know, the idea of dead supply as a concept, that should be a dead concept from the 5-minute mark. Like when you're doing your opening, I love that idea, and you're doing it so well. And so many players, even I see players in Platinum who do it quite well because they've really enshrined that as part of a concept of their opening, right? Only have one SCV building at a time. Then I can start my depot a bit earlier. Then I can start my second barracks a bit earlier, you know, just really, okay, then queue up the extra SCVs just before these ones finish. Queue up the extra Marines just as these ones finish. And that's awesome. But like that just can't be part of how we operate as a macro Terran player past a certain point in the game, unless you are blitzingly fast, insanely fast. So I really feel like we need to drop that concept from 5 minutes, or wherever it is, you know. Basically, we need to free up more APM for the other stuff. Because remember, it's not just about us having a micro units at this point. It's just as you go on, you've got more upgrades to worry about. You need to start 1-1. You need to remember an armory. You need to start 2-2. You need to remember combat shields. You need to land a third base, start 2 gases, change a rally point, build a wall off at that third base. You need to start 2 more barracks and a factory. You need to come back 45 seconds later and build tech labs on those. You need to remember concussive shells. You need to change your rally point. You need to maynard workers out of your main as your main runs out of minerals. You need to micro not just a drop on the north, but also a drop on the south in the main base. Your level of busyness becomes 10 times crazier, right? So like I feel like not having units as dead supply or queued up, it's like sorting your mail in the office. It's like the job you give to the intern because there's just nothing to do. It's like, go get my coffee. And that's fine. Go get a nice coffee, sort the mail when there's nothing else going on. But if you're like the director of a law firm and you're sorting mail, it's insane. Like you're getting billed at $500 or $1,000 an hour. Like what the fuck are you doing sorting mail? And that's kind of the mindset we need to have with our own attention, right? Especially in this matchup because it's so APM intensive, where we need to be like, dude, my attention is worth more than that, right? So we can't be like manually queuing up each unit as they finish. Man. We've got to start batching things, right? We've got to move to a more macro scale. Unless we're playing Archon mode, and then we can designate someone to queue units up as the other ones are finishing. But yeah, I feel like that's a concept you really want to try to just get rid of. What do you think?
I'm thinking, is there a way for me to get fast enough to not queue up a lot of units?
No, because you should be putting that APM towards microing better. If you get that fast, it's much more important for you to just do twice as many run-ins on your drops, clearing creep, picking off overlords, being annoying. That's going to give you way more value than saving 50 minerals of opportunity cost here and there.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, because like something that if you watch a Hero Marine or something, or for instance, you know, we were watching Cuddle Bear, where I was doing some mechanics coaching with him the other day. Whenever you're watching these really high-level Terrans, they are very good at just queuing things constantly. And they do rarely have things queued up, but there are still moments where they'll hit a bunch of Marines or a bunch of this or that queued up. And that's just kind of the way it is, right? And I think we need to be focused so much more on not playing perfect mechanically, because that's such a, I don't know, it's like I'm going to win just by being stronger than my opponent. But I think it's so much more fun and satisfying to free up our attention and put it towards other things. Because I look at a lot of your fundamentals and certain things you're doing, and I think you could easily be, you know, moving to Diamond 2 or Diamond 1 in the near future, but we need to free up some of our actions and just kind of be a little bit, you know, have a bit more time free to do all that stuff. So I think, you know, if we want to think about this, okay, so this dead supply, we want to drop that concept from 5 minutes. Okay, I've written this in your document. However, what's the rule? You know, what's the rule? I think anytime we have a lot of spare, you know, anytime the game is very calm and we're very defensive, we can do a lot more of this. So what's an example of that? TVP, where we got cannoned, right? Or proxy gated and had to expand on the high ground. And we know our opponent's cheesy. So even when we take our natural, what do? We block DTs, you know, weird 2 Stargate Oracle, etc. Like we're just blocking weird. Any one of those games where you're really just sitting in your base. Same against the Zerg who goes like 1 base Ravager into muters off like 20 drones. You'll play these weird games sometimes. You're like, what the fuck? If you're just sitting in your base, suddenly you can start to focus on it more. basically, if you have no pressure on the map to control, you can do a lot more manual macro and be super efficient, you know, by managing your production and having no extra units queued up. But for you as a player, the fundamental skill is the ability to swap back and forth. Needs to be that this is the exception to the rule, right? So at the moment, the rule for you is like, just never queue up units. And that's why we're struggling so hard with our marine production. Even after we talked about it last week, if you watch that marine production in this game, there are quite a few gaps, even though you're focusing on it quite a lot, right? You can see it here, where there's often just one marine building on a reacted barracks. Tech lab barracks is just sitting idle. This is almost constant, right? And I have a similar issue sometimes. So I've been having to consciously focus myself, where I'm like, okay, dude, just queue up more marines. I'm like, queue up more marines, because it's like, it's either one or the other. It's like, well, manually queue up the marines better, or stop focusing on my drops and my harassment as much. And I'm like, well, no, I know the drops and harassment are integral to me throwing my Zerg opponents off and clearing the creep and stopping them spreading creep everywhere. So if I want to focus on these drops everywhere, I'm like, okay, like I just got to queue up more marines, especially at this point, because look at how hard your income kicks up now that your third has landed. You very quickly, like, if we look at your income, you're at 2,700 minerals a minute. That's 54 marines? 54 marines a minute. Obviously building other things. So either way, you're building like 30, 40 marines a minute. That's a crazy amount, right? If you had to go back to your barracks to tap that, that means you would need to go back to your barracks to tap marine production maybe 5 times in a minute. That's like every 12 seconds. And selecting your barracks every 12 seconds, it's possible, but it's very difficult to manage it just right. Very, very, very difficult. And it's not really worth us spending so much APM on. So I think if we can break this and then say, you know what, in a situation where I don't have any pressure on the map, I'm just turtling up, those are the situations where I can focus on not having dead supply. In the early game, when I'm doing my normal build order, I've done 100 times before, and there's not too much going on because I've only got 2 or 3 production facilities and 30 SCVs, that's when I can focus on no dead supply. But once we hit the macro game, we've got to shift gears. We're batching out crazy numbers of marines and progressing forwards that way. And that'll make a really big difference to your play, I think.
Okay.
It's always funny because StarCraft's such a complicated game, and that's a generally really great concept you've built for yourself. And as always, StarCraft teaches us flexibility, right? And that's the hardest part, is that thing which has led to a lot of our success. You having tight opening build orders, good macro, it's been a big part of what's gotten you to where you are now. So learning to drop it, it's one of those things we don't want to. We want to stick in our habits. As humans, we find something that works and we like to stick with it, right? It's like why there's those grumpy old people who never change. Like, you know, we think we get angry when Facebook redesigns or Twitter or whatever redesigns their outlook. We look at old people trying to learn how to use computers, right? It's like ridiculous. They're just like, I don't want to change the way I do things. This is all human instinct, human nature. So try to stay flexible and just be like, okay, this is the trigger, completely shift gears, completely shift focus. The more we learn how to do that, that's so much of StarCraft, right? And sometimes I do this off very little information, where I'll be like, strategically, I'll shift gears drastically. I'll be like, oh, I can feel from the way a Zerg player is microing his Zerglings that he's a shithead, right? Now, that's not actually a term. That's a technical term. What I mean is he's an aggressive player who's looking to take me out tactically and is not going to spread creep or drone properly, because all of his APM is clearly looking for openings in my wall. He wants to do a big ling run by. He wants to surround my Hellions when I'm not looking. He wants to, you know, try and do a Nidus in my back door. These sort of things, right? And I can identify that player, and I will like sometimes totally shift my goals just from seeing how he micros his Zerglings. And that, even though it seems like it's not particularly solid, and it's not, it can give me a crazy number of wins just because I have that ability to totally shift gears in how I'm playing the game. So I think this is actually one of the most important skills. It's one of the things players get so frustrated when we watch our favorite pros play, and we see them make the same build and lose, and then make the same build again and then lose, and then make the same build again and then lose. And we go, what the fuck are you doing? And part of that is them not being flexible. But there's also that dichotomy of them saying, no, I just didn't execute this well enough. That's how I got good at StarCraft, right? Is even when it didn't work, I kept practicing until it did work. So it's always hard, you know, because there is a dichotomy of like, well, Maybe he should have changed his strategy. Maybe he was having an off day and he was just couldn't believe how bad he was executing, and that's why it didn't work. It's always hard to say, but I think if we can learn to drop that concept, that's a big freeing concept for us. That's really going to help you out. So overall, what are the most important things in this game? I think the Reaper micro, very small, doesn't really matter, right? Cool little thing that you can work on. Maybe you can get a drone every game. But the bigger thing is, if we think about this game in context, it's that first push. You know what? I would actually advise you go for a more direct path with that first push as well. If you want to stick to that one, you can. It's really your call. I personally would love to push straight through. You see? Do you see where I signal?
Yes.
I would love to push through there. Now, obviously, he had so much creep there, but if I just cleared that creep ahead of time, like in that little area, I would have loved for you to push through that area, because I think that gets straight to his 4th and 5th base real quickly as well. But it's really up to you. I think as long as you're consistent with your path, that's great. As long as you're like, I would have loved to see how that push worked if he didn't, you know, run past you, which was very frustrating, because then he kind of interrupted us getting to see how your push would have eventuated. Because there was a moment where you kind of dilly-dallied down here with your army before he ran in, and I was like, ooh, every second that goes by is important. And it was about to get to the point where it was a big problem. Whoops, sorry. It was about to get to the point where it was a big problem. And then he ran in and obviously changed things. So I didn't get to see what would have happened otherwise. I really like that you're just kind of splitting your army up at this point. I think this is kind of how you play against Zerg in the late game if you're in this scenario, right? You just do bio run bys, and you just sit at home with tanks, build some Vikings if they've got broods, and you just try to do some stim micro on every side and keep trying to get planetaries up. And this is one of the best ways to win. So this was actually really good, just bio multi-prong by you. I'm looking at your control groups, and it looks like, what do we got? Yep, so these guys. What's number 9 on again? I'm just trying to remember.
Number 9 is either W or the this one.
Is that where is that? Is that to the left of 1 on German keyboard?
It's about, it's left to 1.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, same where tilde is for me. Okay, awesome. And then he gets massively caught out here, and you save the army on the south, and the game's yours at this point. Awesome. Okay, so this was cool. So we end up winning here, which is awesome. This is really good. Your ability to just kind of stay calm, keep macroing, to drop 2 places at once while having your tanks on the defense and stuff. This was really nice, man. This was really good. You should be proud of this. Did the Zerg throw it away? Yes. Do you know, I feel like all of my TVZ wins, the Zerg throws at least a little bit. Let's go back to the start and let's take a look here at a few things. So number 1 is we don't hit our 2-1-1 very tight at all. But let's look at the Zerg's work account. You're going to notice that this Zerg was very slow at droning, because he is not really ahead of us on workers in this whole early game. See, like, he gets a few workers ahead, then we catch up. It's a few workers ahead, then we catch up. We've got mules as well, right?
Yeah.
So he does not really do that. However, does get a big upgrade lead on us and a very quick bane speed, which makes it very hard for our drops to keep doing damage. From here, once he deflects the 2-on-1, the scary thing is if he just builds 20 drones right now, right? So let's look at what he does. He's going crazy fast infestation pit. Goes for a macro hatch. No 4th base down yet. No good saturation on the 3rd. He's kind of rushing up his gas just a little bit faster than he probably should, because the minerals is the more important thing. His 4th is so late. So he's going to go for like an 8-minute 4th, I think, which is a very delayed. And you can see you're keeping neck and neck in the work account. Yeah. Do you ever unload Marines on Banelings, by the way? Or Marauders?
Yes, sometimes.
Feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you get the Marauder in the middle of like 20 Banelings, you're like, oh my god, it's just so funny. Oh shit. Sorry. Yeah, and the thing is, he gets up like this scary tech quite fast, Hydras and Banes, so it's actually probably quite good that you kind of pull off your aggression a little bit. And when his 4th does finally go down, 730, yeah, his work account is very weak most of this game, but he's got the tech up, he's got good creep spread, very good for Diamond 3 especially, very, very good. And Yeah. Yeah, and he actually respreads it and stuff. Yeah, yeah. It's not like spreading completely evenly, but he does, over time, spread it in every direction. So which is really nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so pretty good play by your opponent. You can see he went gas way too early. I mentioned that earlier. So he's not lining up his resources correctly. But other than that, yeah, we were, I guess, a little bit lucky, you could say. I mean, I think we were doing good pressure to keep him busy enough. But there are games like this where it feels exactly the same from your point of view, but he's up at 80 drones right now, right? And has been for a minute. Those are the games where you just end up drowning, right? There's just too much Zerg, and you're like, oh my god. And those are the games where like your first push becomes so much more important, because there's no way you're going to keep up in the longer back and forth game with the drops, because they'll just have way too much Lingbane production. So that's something you can always kind of just do a quick look at, is their work account, and get a feel for it in your replays. So if you ever play a game, you're like, I thought I played well, but I got crushed, like what the hell happened? If they do just jump up way ahead of you and workers quite quickly, and then you don't really do significant damage, they may just be ahead of you all game. And I want you to just think about, like, what would you look at if you saw a game like that? What are the key things you're looking at that you could maybe have done better in that sort of game?
Few things. Normally, I look at what I did with my my push, if it got delayed, or I guess if it was on time, or if it got crushed. Normally, yeah, I just look at my my push at the early game, if there was some kind of all-in that I survived or something like that.
So did we hit our timing just right to check them? Did we fall behind from, you know, a Ling run by, or, you know, early attack, etc.? Yep, so those are some definitely key ones. Anything else that springs to mind? I guess one more is, if your timing, I think the timing, you know, did you hit your timing correctly, right? And that includes the micro, right? Maybe you hit, but you somehow walked into 2 slow banelings, killed all 16 Marines, right? That's part of, did your timing hit them at the right time? With your 16 Marines, did that pressure? I guess also we can say, you know, did our 2-2 push hit just right as well, right? Not just the first one. So I can put that underneath the other one. You know, did our 2-2 push hit just right? You know, would we have killed if we were 30 seconds faster or something like that, right? So you can just look for stuff like that. Often those games where your opponent's a bit greedy, it's like it hits a point where if they do manage to like crush an attack, then they kind of run away with things. But those, I think that's already the right things. You know, you're saying, oh, let's go back and check. Was there something really early I forgot about? Did a Ling run by get in and kill the SCVs on my natural or something? You know, yada yada. I think that's really good. You're already looking at the correct things there, and you're going back and saying, wait, did I hit my timing right? And if not, okay, what went wrong in my macro, right? You know, what did I forget to click on in this game? What did I forget to do here? And looking at those things is awesome, right? It's huge. Makes a massive, massive difference. Because that just allows you to kind of look within yourself and find something to improve, something really, really, you know, consistent as well. If it's part of your build order or something like that, where you're like, oh man, I misclicked 2 mules. I clicked them next to the minerals, so I was 500 minerals short because I just had 2 mules that didn't mine or something like that, right? So everything was just late. That sort of stuff can just totally throw off the timing. You know, those little mistakes. Oh, you know, my Reaper ran in and just got itself killed, and then, you know, so that was already a problem. But then, you know, my 16 Marines were 40 seconds late. So this is the sort of the game where if he had got higher in drones, we would go back and say, oh, well, our drop was really late, right? And that was number 1 because the Reaper died, remember? Number 2, the Reaper, because it died, we built a bunker really early. And then our starport was quite delayed because we were worried. So there was like a flow-on effect, right? Where we could be like, oh, well, my double Marine drop was 30 seconds late because my Reaper died. And we can kind of trace it back. Okay, let's make sure we keep our Marine, you know, our Reaper alive next time. Be a bit more focused on that. And we can kind of, you know, be really organized with that. Yeah. So there's a few other moments here as well, like lifting the orbital. When you see an attack coming in, you know, obviously I think we were a bit surprised he attacked in there, but, you know, this all flows on from that earlier fight, right? Where if we organized a little bit earlier there, even once things were bad, I just want us to rehearse this in our mind one last time. In this situation, if we were a little bit quicker to just siege and set up that army there and then pull back our reinforce, that would have been great. Because I think 2 more siege tanks, right, as well as a bunch of bio just rallies in. But even if he went up there, remember? 2 siege tanks, siege behind your wall in, bunch of bio rallying out there, you'd be fine. But as it is, unfortunately these tanks walk all the way down there. So even if we'd done it this way, but we at least kept these 2 tanks alive, that would have been a big difference. One of them we do save. Then we also rally a bunch more Marines and Marauders out accidentally, right? And we haven't queued these medevacs back to drop because we're trying to multi-drop. Yeah. So that's like an example of a game falling apart real quickly. So I would really recommend try to get those Marine spotters out a little bit more. And try to make sure, remember, as you're pushing out, use that drop. Keep them busy with that drop so they can't jump on you. Like, you know, if you can just walk across the map because they're distracted, siege up in a really nice location and start hitting them because they're busy dealing with the drop, it can make a really big difference. So these little things are definitely huge impacts. And, you know, the more on top of things you are with your drops, the more the Zerg feels like the matchup's unfair. And the more he's going to be making Reddit posts about, you know, how broken the matchup is and that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so biggest takeaways for today is the dead supply concept and dropping that as we get a bit later in the game, yeah?
Yes.
All right. So, have you kind of got any firm way of working on that in your head right now?
On the start, I guess the concept of not wanting any dead supply, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So how, sorry, I think you cut out there. Continue.
Okay. The thing that helped me from queuing up stuff was me thinking that it would be a bad habit because I guess the only reason was because I didn't see any professional Terran players do it or that often. And I thought if I do it, it's wrong, I guess. But now that you've explained it to me in more detail, I can follow the thought process, and it's I don't think it will be a problem of not wanting to do it, but more of a now I need to get in the habit of doing it.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
And I guess the macro cycle is going to be integral there. So it's 2 parts, right? It's number 1, think about what your macro cycle is, internalize it, and watch your replays and make sure you're doing it. And it's number 2, when are we shifting into that? You know, try to think about, at this point I should have had shifted into that. I was still worrying about not queuing up 1 extra Marine here or 1 extra medevac here. You know, I was wasting time looking at my production hotkeys, looking at these little white dots in the bottom wireframe, which is not worth looking at, right? Right? That's not worth your APM at that point in the game, right? So try to identify what that point is in the game and go, wait, okay, I'm watching my replay. It looks like I'm still not queuing up any extra units. Why didn't I trigger over into this? I should have realized that. And you can be like, it's at this point clearly where I have 2 drops to micro. From that point onwards, like I know I should just be queuing extra stuff up because I'm busier in the game, right? And for each matchup, it might be a little bit different, but just find your point in each matchup so you can create your own trigger point to go, should have swapped into just queuing that stuff up, man.
In general, that switch when I start queuing up things is when it gets busy. Maybe if someone is the Zerg all-ins me or does a huge attack early, then I would also start queuing up things, right?
During that moment while you're very busy, yes. Yeah. Though maybe in the follow-up to that, if you feel like you can't leave your base, maybe you actually have extra APM once the fighting dies down, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe in that scenario, you actually are being a bit more manual on your micro and you are being a bit more. But
okay,
yes, during the fighting, absolutely. Just queue up a few extra units for sure. Did we talk about muling previously?
We talked, you told me to put the mules on the patches that have more minerals in them, so it mines out more evenly.
Yeah.
You told me about that a mule does normally a trip where it loses minerals,
Yeah.
but I did not, as you also advised me to, I did not bother doing that, pulling them off.
Yeah. Oh, don't pull them off. But yeah, it's just I did notice that whilst you are mostly dropping them on the right patches here for the early stages, later on there are a few points where you start just spamming them in your main, and your main and natural do mine out a bit quickly. I'm just going to double check here. It looks like your mules are mostly being spread across your natural, which is really good. So that's overall good muling. Just later on, you were kind of just dropping them in your main when I was like, why mule those patches? You know, have a few extra mineral patches, because there's a point here where your mineral patches run out real hard. Yeah, I guess, I mean, everyone has their habits. Some players tend to just always mule one side of the mineral line and not the other, myself included. And I guess if we can fight that, we do keep a little bit better saturation up, but I think this is okay. It was pretty late in the game. Okay, yeah, it was quite late in the game when everything screwed up there. Because I was looking at it and I was like, dude, you have like, there's a point here, because you take a long time to get your fourth because you're getting hammered by him, where you don't actually have anywhere to mine from your workers. Like your main at like 13 minutes, your main's like gone, your natural's almost completely gone, and it's like, oh shit, like you needed a fourth so desperately because your income was about to dip incredibly hard in this game. Anyways, we do need to finish up. That's a pretty minor point for now. I think overall, I just wanted to double check. Your muling looks okay. Your muling does look okay.
My man!
So that's cool. All right, let's hop out of there. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's going to carry over to your other matchups a little bit as well. So, just remember as well, this is going to give you more APM to do cool shit with your units, right? So, you know, some people do stuff like after 6 medevacs, they're like, that's all I need in TVZ. I don't need more than 6 medevacs. And then they just start building Liberators and they just keep queuing them into Zerg's bases. So, for instance, the Zerg you just showed me in that replay would not be able to defend Liberator harass. No Overlords on the edges, no spotting units, no spores in the bases, didn't have that many queens. Hydras were running around in the army in a big army, packed the whole game. These sort of special maneuvers are things you can choose to start focus on. For now, don't necessarily immediately replace the APM with that. Just focus on getting the new rhythm with it and still going for your timing pushes. There's a lot of things you can do with that APM you free up though, okay? Makes a really big difference for you as you get better at that. So yeah, try to get out the new rhythm. Try to be self-reflective. Make sure you are focusing on that and get in the habit of going, awesome, I just queued up a bunch of units. Guess what? What does that mean? It means you can remember all your upgrades. You have a bit more time to check your upgrades start right on time, to make sure your production facilities go down right on time, make sure those add-ons go down right on time. So all of those things, you're already fantastic on your depots. It also means you can harass more, you can micro more potentially. So this is you know, this is not us just being like, hey, we're just going to queue up more units and just sit there with our hands under our ass and do nothing. We're just sitting on our hands, you know. All about freeing up your APM for more important tasks. So hopefully we can naturally shift into everything else performing a little bit better as we move that APM around. And hopefully the non-stop marine production and tank production means your first push. If we can get 7 tanks, a few more marines in there, that's going to be awesome. Awesome, man. All right, got a jet, but good luck in your practice. Save more replays and stuff, and we can link up again after Home Story Cup. In terms of, obviously we didn't get around to TVT and TVP, but choosing a build order, whether through discussing on all things Terran, discussing, you know, in, you can drop by chat and talk there anytime or whatever, or just looking through the builds that are up. Basically just choosing something and working on it is probably going to be quite key. And you know, having that direction. So yeah, definitely, if you want to just start grinding at a style that you enjoy for each of those matchups, and then we can pick that up after Home Story Cup as well. New maps, new balance, so it should be fun.
All right, thank you.
Awesome, man. All right, have a good night, brother. Laters. All right. How are we doing, guys? Thank you very, very much for hanging out, guys. I really appreciate the support. Angelic Nutcake earlier, Philharmonic, Dralana. How you doing, Dralana? Thanks, Aaron. Nitsua with the 14-month resub. Thanks, guys. Hope you're all having a good day. Later today, we're going to be coaching Australia, which should be fun. So we're going to be hunting through VODs and looking for mechanical habits, looking for things to improve, talking about methods and techniques, which is going to be really educational for me because he's a very high-level Protoss player. Well above me. So I'm going to learn a lot from him, and hopefully I can kind of push him in the right direction. We're going to try to do a couple of episodes of the Florencio Files before then. So we're only going to do a short ladder session today. I think I'll queue individual races. We just got everything back to GM. So we're going to go to Home Story Cup and get kicked out again, which is going to be great. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to get rid of the X5. We'll change the name. It's just a very old team I used to be on. And since the team doesn't exist anymore, I figure no one's getting free advertising. That's why we still have it. We didn't get many submissions, unfortunately, Meritus, so we just cancelled it. My fault. I realized I've done a test map before. Oh shit! I forgot to tweet that I was live. So we've done test map before, and no one sends in replays. It just doesn't happen. Is the big problem. So yeah, we found that that's something we've got to just kind of work on. There is that just making sure we have a more interesting current topic. That was a lazy topic for me. We're just going to announce a new topic when we get back. I fly literally tomorrow night. So we're going to do stream today, stream tomorrow. But yeah, tomorrow night.